You are listening to the Zeebzob Pinewood Derby Roundup Episode 2, sponsored by Goat Boy Products, maker of high-quality Pinewood Derby tools. Special guest this week, E3 PWD. And now, here is your host, Zeebzob.
Hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the Zeebzob Pinewood Derby Roundup. This is the second episode. I'm not sure how many have listened to the first episode. As I've never done this before, I have no idea how to get the metrics on the number of listeners or downloads. I'm kind of learning this as I go. I do know that I do have a few subscribers, so that's cool. I'll put a link to subscribe to this out on the forums. So if you want, you can download these podcasts to your mobile device and enjoy them on the go. The responses I've gotten so far from the first episode have all been positive, so thank you all for that. The biggest thing for me with these podcasts is listening to the sound of my own voice. Like many of you, I'm sure hearing your own voice is somewhat unsettling, kind of cringeworthy even. It's easy to be critical of what you hear, but in reality, to everybody else, I most likely sound like any other ordinary guy. Bandsaw Bill did go as far as to say that he thought I sounded good, so thanks, Bill. He also wanted to know if I could do the Wolfman Jack howl. You may be aging yourself there, Bill. Not sure if anybody even remembers Wolfman Jack in this day and age. But some racers have expressed interest in being a guest on the show, and I think that's really cool. Initially, I had thought I would really only be able to have the local guys here as guests. If I wanted to have racers from other parts of the country on, the only really good way I could figure to do that would be to take my laptop and headset microphones on the road when we go to live races. Recording over the phone kind of sucks as far as sound quality, but I've been playing around with the recording setups, and it turns out that Skype comes over pretty well, and I can mix the audio right in. I'll probably still take the studio on the road with me when we do go to live races. I think there would be a better dynamic being there with somebody. In the end, this is all pretty much done as a goof, but deep down I'm kind of digging this, so it's been a lot of fun. Right now I'm using zeebzob.wordpress.com as the blog that I put these podcasts on. You can always go there and listen to the shows. You can subscribe to the RSS feed there as well. Maybe someday I'll just build my own website, but I have no real plans for that yet. My Pinewood Derby forum is zeebzob.proboards.com. You can create an account there and join in on the discussions. There are currently 32 members. We had 33, but somebody went off on a rant, cursed all over my board, and then deleted his account. I won't mention who it was, but if you sign up, you can figure it out pretty easily. They've left everything up there. Anyway, if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's @Zeebzob. I haven't really used Twitter much, but now with this podcast, it could really be pretty useful. If you have questions for me or want to ask questions of upcoming guests, you can send me a tweet. The guests I will have in the next few podcasts are, not surprisingly, Quad Dad and Goat Boy as well. Glenn Jukes said he'd be interested in being on in the future too. I guess I find the prospect of this podcast venture really exciting because so many of these racers have been in the hobby for such a long time, and they must have fascinating stories. Maybe that's the thing I like most of all. If any of you know me or have ever met me, one of the things that becomes clear is that I'm a storyteller. People say I'm good at it, and I'd like to think that I am. The big problem with being a storyteller is that those closest to me, like my wife, she hates my stories, and who can blame her? She's heard all of them a million times. Funny thing though, my youngest son, we'll call him Matthew because that's his name, he loves my stories. He makes me tell some of the stories over and over to the point that even I'm sick of them. A couple decades ago, really, I used to work with a bunch of guys and all of whom have heard my stories probably at least a few times. One of the quietest guys in the group was a guy named Dean, and Dean had been in the Navy after high school. Yeah, typical Navy deal. He spent months out to sea, and I'm sure he must have seen a lot of things. But he was, like I said, a quiet guy. He never really spoke about it much. One day, another guy says to him, "Hey, Dean, you must have some stories from your Navy days." He says, "Thank God Andy was never in the Navy. He's done nothing with his life, and we can't get him to shut up." That's always kind of stuck with me, and I think it's just hilarious. But on to this week's show. First, I want to recap the PDDR King of the Hill race that was held on December 13th. I had two cars racing, my Super Pro Mod, Primal Scream, and my Turtle car, Breaking Wind. These were the same two cars that I raced the weekend before at the NPWDRL Man of the Mountain. I just shipped them right from John's house to Glenn's. One interesting thing to note is my Super Pro Mod arrived at Glenn's with a broken wheel, and these cars were basically shipped across town. I would love to see what goes on with the USPS. And second thought, maybe I don't want to see that, but yeah, across town, and they got some damage. But fortunately for me, I sent some spare wheels for that car, just in case, and Glenn installed the wheel, and I was all set. Okay, for the rundown of the races, I'll start with the slowest cars and go up to the fastest. In the Turtle class, it was Jukes Engineering over Zeebzob. I tell you, that Utah air must be thin. When I test that car here in Wisconsin, we're at 800 foot elevation. That car could typically take longer than the 10 seconds the timer displays. But in Salt Lake City, they're at 4,300 feet, and it's just not the same. And that's not an excuse. Glenn did a great job with his car for sure, but that's just how it goes. Just as an aside note, John over at PWDRL said he would have a Snail Wars race at the Nationals this year in Nebraska. I am planning to be there live, and I think I can dial my car in to the racetrack and the conditions out there. So anyways, congrats to Glenn on that one. As we go to the next classes, I want to touch on something that I would like to start seeing recognition on. Many of you know that Goat Boy used to race slot cars before he got into Pinewood Derby hobby. In the slot car world, they recognize the top qualifier, or the TQ as it's known, and they recognize that as well as the finals winner. So I am going to name the TQ and the finals winner from this point going forward in all the leagues that have the prelim round and the finals round. Now, NPWDRL and PDDR both run formats this way. APR runs their races in a 6-run average. So I suppose I should take a moment here to discuss the slight differences in the way the leagues run. So APR, as I said, it's a 6-run average on their 3-lane track. They run twice in each lane. NPWDRL, they have a prelim round. Then the top 20% of builders will move into the finals. For example, if there are going to be 6 builders moving on to the finals, but one builder has 2 cars in the top 6, then 7 cars will move in, assuming there's 1 car per builder of the other 5. At that point, it's a clean slate, and your next 4 runs determine the winner. Over at PDDR, they have a 3-lane track. Everyone runs once in each lane. Then the top 3 builders move their best car into the finals, and the winner is determined by the 6-run average from the prelim and the finals. So in pure stock over at PDDR King of the Hill, Pony Express, he TQ'd, and he actually had the top 3 cars in the finals. Or excuse me, he had the top 3 cars, but just the one moved into the finals. But in there, Pony proved it was no fluke, and he came out on top. So he is the pure stock King of the Hill. So congrats, Pony. Next up, we have Extreme Pure Stock, and those that don't know the difference in the classes between the leagues, here's a quick rundown as I understand them. PDDR Pure Stock is like NPWDRL Basics and APR Basico. PDDR Extreme Pure Stock is like APR Pure Stock and NPWDRL Street Stock. PDDR Stock is APR Stock and NPWDRL Street Pro. PDDR Modified is equal to APR Modified and NPWDRL Eliminator. PDDR Super Pro Mod is the same as APR Super Pro Mod, and in NPWDRL it's called Unlimited. And the PDDR Turtle is the NPWDRL Snail. So I'm sure that one wasn't too tough to figure out. So Extreme Pure Stock, Jukes Engineering TQ'd over Eastman by 1 millisecond, and in the finals they stepped it up even further and won by 6 milliseconds over Eastman. Mercury Racing was third. Stock class, again, Jukes Engineering TQ'd, and they won in the finals. Modified class, Pony Express, again, TQ'd, and he won the finals as well, so he's got 2 King of the Hill titles. And finally, we have Super Pro Mod, and if you can hear the excitement in my voice, that's my favorite class there. Here we have Jukes Engineering and Zeebzob, myself, tying for TQ. And we're a full 5 milliseconds over third place, and in that class, that's a really big margin. So on to the finals we go. Super Pro Mod King of the Hill for 2014 is, drum roll please, Zeebzob. All right. Also, one thing to note is I actually ran the exact same time in all 3 lanes in the finals there, so Glenn's got that track dialed in pretty good. So that's a recap for the most current race. I'm going to try to go over the results from all leagues going forward. It's so hard for most guys to get a victory with all the great builders out there. So for some of us to hear our names and get a little recognition, it's a pretty cool thing. But be warned, you'll hear names like QuickTime and Kinzer and Spacewalker, Too Fast for You. You'll hear them a lot. And if John comes out of retirement, you're going to hear Derby Dad often. You're also going to hear Zeebzob a lot too, but that's only because this is my show. Now is the time that I'd like to welcome our first guest into the studio. Sitting with me is Todd Meyer. His racing name is E3 PWD. Hello, Todd. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
Absolutely. All right. First thing I'm sure a lot of people want to know about the name E3. How did you come about that? What does it mean?
Well, I got an older son and a younger son. Oldest son's in college, youngest son's scout age. When we first started with the Pinewood Derby, my oldest son, who grew up around drag racing, I was telling him how cool the Pinewood Derby stuff was. Mm-hmm. And he's just ripping this stuff down left, right, and center. You know, toy cars, you know, what are you guys doing?
Sure.
So every time I talk to him, he'd say something like, oh, it's so epic.
Okay.
Oh, it's so extreme.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, this is so exciting. So I put those 3 together.
Okay, good.
Epic, extreme, excitement. Then later, after he knew a little more about it, he came around and started thinking it's pretty cool too.
Okay.
So that's how it got started.
Great.
Epic, extreme, excitement.
So there you have it, folks. The E3 explanation from the man himself. Okay, so how did you get into Pinewood Derby racing? What was the attraction?
Well, at first, my wife had signed me up to go to the grade school with my youngest son, Benjamin, to get him into scouts.
Okay.
And I was never a scout. So at first, I'm like, oh man, this is just something else I gotta do. So we go there, we get signed up, and some of the first things we did was like the boat racing, which kind of cool, but
sure.
Not quite the Derby.
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't in it too long, and the Derby came up. So I had gave myself a couple weeks with my son to build a car. Mm-hmm. Got a few tips online, got a little helper book, and started getting going. So I'm sure as a lot of people have the story of disaster on building that first car.
Yep.
Everything went wrong, but when we got there for the test session, we were running fast time with this thing for quite a while. We walked out of the test session with the second fast time. And just that in itself, there was such an allure for me, because it's so similar to drag racing. You know? Tweak this, tweak that, try this, run it down the track. Did it improve? Didn't it improve? And that first race, we ended up getting third overall. So he got a great big trophy, and he's just kind of looking at me like, way to go, Dad. Just that look was like, oh, I'm hooked now.
Sure.
You know? And some of the scout leaders were like, hey, Todd, if you have any more fun, we're going to have you running this next year because you're having way too much fun with it.
Yeah, and here's, let me interject a little bit about Todd. He is an excitable guy. There has been so many times that he'll be here testing at the Zeebzob speed shop, and you could just see it in his face when he gets a good run. He's running down there to get his car, and he's snapping his fingers, and me and Ian just look at him. We're just hilarious. You know, he's like an excited puppy. He runs down, gets his car. But if he has a bad run, you should see the look on this guy's face, and he'll say stuff like, "Fellas, I just ruined this car. I have literally ruined this car," and it's hilarious because we've all been there. We've tuned the car out of contention, but it can almost always be brought back with a little bit of time. But just the dejected look on your face, Todd, it's priceless. So yeah, I can see how they would think that you're just having too much fun just from knowing you. So that's awesome. Now, so that was your first scout race. I guess, how did you discover league racing? How did that come about?
Well, one of the sites I had been going on a little bit was John's site.
Okay.
Just to get a few tips here and there for our race. And I had signed up for a dad race at the districts that had all got canceled. So I had ordered a few things from John for that, going out on the board, getting some tips, and then I noticed there was this national race pretty much in our backyard, about 20 minutes from my house.
Sure.
Like, I got to do this. So that was pretty much what started the league.
And that would have been the 2013 Nationals.
Yeah.
Okay. So then I remember the first post I saw from you was you were asking about these district races, and you described what it was. It was a outdoor race at the local zoo, and I thought this sounds a little bit familiar because I had been through it. And here in the Milwaukee County, their district race or whatever, I don't know if it was council or district,
I think they combine it.
Yeah, I think you're right. They have it outdoor at the Milwaukee County Zoo, and they have this huge track that's probably, I don't know, 90 or 100 feet long, and the start hill, they're up on scaffolds to put the cars up there, and the track is not smooth or rough, and I always kind of likened it to putting your finely tuned Indy car on the Baja circuit going down this track. So, you know, it left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. But and I told Todd, I said, I asked him, I said, is this in Milwaukee? And he said, yeah. And then we started talking, where do you live? And turns out he's just like 10 minutes from me. But yeah, then you started coming over here to the Zeebzob Speed Shop for some testing, yeah?
Yeah, you had reached out to me on John's board.
Okay.
To come over and do some testing before the Nationals, which obviously you had involvement on setting up that Nationals. So that's how the first test started.
Sure. Yeah, I remember saying, if you want to test your car beforehand, come on over. And you said, yeah, I'd like to take you up on that. So, yeah, and then you met Quad Dad and Ian, and so I guess who else have you befriended in the Pinewood hobby? Who are your go-to guys?
Well, I talk with Benji Dean quite a bit.
Okay, JBD.
Quick Time, of course, yourself, Mario, Goat Boy, John,
Sure.
Mr. B.
Mr. B. Yeah, he'll be a guest one of these days. Yep.
He's a guy I work with that used to be in the radio control hobby.
Okay.
Always had a fascination with Pinewood Derby and was restoring Pinewood Derby cars.
Sure.
So got him racing. He's having a good time with
Good.
it. If I forgot somebody, I apologize. I've talked to Hogan a few times on the phone.
Sure. Okay.
That's probably most of them.
Sure. Now, so you said you work with Mr. B. So speaking of work, you are an engineer, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I guess what, if any, advantage do you think that gives you in this hobby?
I think my personality, I'm pretty meticulous,
Sure.
which can be a help or a hindrance, depending how you look at it.
Sure.
It probably takes me 3 times longer to even prep a set of wheels than most people.
Sure.
But maybe there's something to it.
Yeah,
I
maybe.
don't know.
You know, you do have some success in the street stocks and the eliminator where you have to prep those wheels with, you know, the bore prep, the wax, the oil, much more so than I have for sure. And you've shown me how you prep wheels, and I gotta say that you are quite meticulous at it. A little funny note here is, speaking of his personality and meticulousness, we were going to tape this actually a couple hours earlier than we are now, but Todd sends me a text. He says, "Hey, you mind if we push this back a little bit? I just got the tracking notice that my box is finally going to arrive. I just want to make sure that they're okay, you know, while the mailman drops them off." And I just thought, man, sometimes my cars come back and they're sitting on my front porch for days before I even go and look for them. I'm like, oh yeah, those cars should be back. But I found that a little bit funny. All right, so you touched on something a little earlier too, that away from the Pinewood Derby hobby, you talked about drag racing. Now, some people may not know this, but you drag race motorcycles.
Correct.
Yeah, talk about that.
Well, I started off a little bit fooling around with cars in the late 80s.
Sure.
Muscle car type stuff. Not real fast, but for the time and my age, you know, late teens, it was pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm.
But then I saw that to go fast in a car, you need a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I started looking at the motorcycles at the drag strip. Don't get me wrong, they still cost a fortune.
I bet.
It's just not as big of a fortune.
Sure.
So in the early 90s, I started taking my street bike to the track. And then, you know, I just seen the guys with the proper built or purpose-built bikes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I got hooked on it. You know, as a young kid, my dad used to take me to all kinds of different motorsports racing.
Sure.
And we knew guys that raced motorcycles of different disciplines. But every time we went to the drags,
Mm-hmm.
it just did something to me more than the other forms of racing.
Sure.
So in the mid-90s, I finally got a purpose-built bike and been racing ever since.
Okay, and have you had some success racing?
Yeah, we've won some races. We almost got it done in 2007 at Indianapolis at a big national race.
Okay.
We were the last 3 in a class called Top Gas, which is a 8/22 index, about 160 miles an hour.
Really? Okay.
But the Cinderella story ended before the
Oh,
clock
yeah.
struck midnight.
Yeah. And what kind of horsepower do these bikes have?
I got a couple bikes. My highest horsepower bike has a 10-inch car tire in the back, and it's a nitrous oxide injected bike.
Okay.
It's got about 270 horsepower.
Wow, that's crazy.
So it'll go 0 to 162, say, in 8 seconds flat.
That's nuts.
Well, they get a lot more nuts than
Oh,
that.
I bet. I mean, is it like white knuckle time, or what's it like?
When I first started drag racing, I would go down the track, and the guy that used to help me, he'd always say, well, you know, how'd that feel? What happened? I would only remember I dumped the clutch, and I'm getting on the brakes at the end. He's like, did you get all the shifts on time? You know, we see a light that's set to an RPM,
Mm-hmm.
and when the light comes on, I push a button. and through pneumatics or air, it shifts the bike.
Okay.
It sounds easy, but there's quite a timing to it to get it right.
Sure.
And you got to get it right to get a good pass. So he'd ask, it looked like you short shifted a little on this one, or maybe hung it out a little too long on this shift. And I'm like, dude, I don't remember anything. I'm 75 feet behind the bike the whole time.
Yeah.
But as I got more experience and got more used to going that fast, you hear athletes talk about slowing things down.
Sure.
I got a little bit of experience with that just from the drag racing. It really is true. After a while, it all slows down because then or for me, I'm capable of making my mind work that fast to get all the things done you need to get done in a run.
Right. That's fascinating. I couldn't imagine being on a bike going that fast. That's nuts. And one of the terms that I've come to use, because after meeting you, is if you see a Pinewood Derby car going down and it's just going from side to side, you'll use the term tank slapper. And I guess this has come from bike racing.
Absolutely.
Ever had a tank slapper in real life?
Yeah, not to the point where it pitched me off.
Okay.
But, kind of like Pinewood Derby, everything's got to be right to get a good pass. When it comes to this drag racing stuff, there's so many things going on that if you get the setup right, or if you don't get the setup right, you can be 3/4 way down the track and still spinning the tire.
Really?
And with a big square tire, if you get up on the edge, it has to stay flat, so you can't lean the bike.
Yeah.
So if the bike's getting out of the groove, you gotta kind of ride it like a bicycle with training wheels. So if you lean it over a little bit, you get on the edge of the tire. Now it's like riding on a rubber band.
Okay.
And that can create a tank slapper.
Just back and forth, huh?
Absolutely.
That must be just frightening when that happens. So, also, as we're a little bit away from the Pinewood talk and we're talking about other aspects of your life, some of the things I know you like, you have fantastic taste in music. What do you like? If you haven't noticed, it's a lot like old Zeebzob likes here.
Well, I really like a lot of the old classic rock, like the Led Zeppelin, Kiss,
Sure.
Rush, which to me was all kind of the pre-metal. When I talk about metal, I'm not into the real dark, scary stuff, I really like the popular metal that was popular through, even the early 80s all the way into the early 90s. So Scorpions, Dokken,
Motley
Rat,
Crue, yeah.
Motley Crue.
Nice.
Yeah, all that good stuff.
All the good stuff, yeah. So I kind of agree with your taste in music. So sometimes when we're testing here, we put a couple of tunes on, and it's always a good rockin' time here at the Zeebzob Speed Shop. One other thing we have in common also with Goat Boy as well is BMX racing. You used to do that. I used to do that. Ian did. You got any good stories about that?
Yeah, I did that from the time I was 11 till the time I was 19. I was getting a little too big to be on this 20-inch bike.
Sure.
But, a lot of good stories. Traveled around a bit. Didn't hit too many big nationals. It was more Wisconsin, Illinois stuff. But, I think some of the funniest stories, we used to go up to this place in Sheboygan to race.
Sheboygan. Everybody's like, where? What? Who? What?
Sheboygan.
Yep.
I think they sell bratwurst.
They may be known for selling a sausage or two, yeah.
But that track was one of the first tracks I can remember where they were starting to put in these pretty big double jumps and pro jumps.
Sure.
And for people that don't know what that is, it's a start ramp and a landing ramp. A pro jump, the landing ramp is higher than the ramp you go off of to clear it. And if you can't jump it, you can't race.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. So I think at the time I'm like 13, 14 years old. And kind of what you were alluding to on how excited I get when we make a good Pinewood Derby run.
Sure.
Well, in BMX, there's usually 3 qualifiers: first, second, and then last chance qualifier, or LCQ. Motocross racing has that same name as well. So a lot of times I would qualify for the main in the second or the last qualifier, but once in a while I'd get in there in the first. When I'd get in there in the first, I'm buying everybody's sodas and hot dogs. And I think
people they throwing the race at this point because they want a free dog. Yeah.
I think some of the guys I raced with that I was also friends with, they got in tune with this.
They're hitting the brakes at the end. Yeah, let Todd go by.
I think there was a few times I won those first heats just because there was a bunch of hungry kids. Because it never panned out the same in the main. It's like, how did I smoke this guy in the first round?
Yeah, when the trophy's on the line, then it's a different story. That's hilarious. Oh, good stuff. All right, so let's get back to some of the Pinewood Derby racing, some of your accomplishments. I guess which races stand out for you, whether it was just a regular league race or the Man of the Mountain or a Nationals. Give us some of your thoughts.
I think kind of starting from the beginning, the 2013 Nationals.
Sure.
That was really cool. I mean, I didn't know anybody too much. You and Ian, John. Kind of a funny story about that race. We show up. You guys got the doors locked.
Right.
And you guys are pretty firm. Whatever. It opens at 3. So
right.
We got our Tupperware tub with everything in there, and we're waiting for the door to open.
Sitting at the door, looking in the window.
So we get in there. It's a test session. It's pretty laid back. And on the back table, there's all these spots for the cars. And there's a sheet printed out with whoever's name, whatever competitor, and a sticker for their car.
Okay.
So I thought this was like a self-service island.
Yeah.
Todd Meyer, Benjamin Meyer, my son had a car in there and I had a car in. And so I just took the sticker, put it on the back of the car, put it back.
Yeah.
Well, the next day, check-in, we're checking in and we already got the sticker on. And John's like, why is the sticker already on? I'm like, I put it on.
So what was the look on his face like? Oh, here we go with the rookies.
He was just thinking I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So we did weigh the cars, and Joel helped weigh the cars. It was all legit. But
Sure.
Just kind of shows how green we were. But we ended up finishing second in that scout class.
That's a good story. Tell that one.
Well, we didn't tweak the car to your recommendation. I put it in the box, and
Sure.
we put it in the safety deposit box, so I couldn't touch it. Just kidding.
Yeah.
It was tempting to play with it, but I didn't. So that car actually won all 6 runs. So all the prelims and the finals it took first. And I still didn't really understand how we were doing this finals thing and all that.
Sure, by time.
Yeah, but there was another guy there. His name was Don.
Naughty Racing.
Naughty Racing.
Don Knott, yes.
Don, and kind of an interesting thing. We saw him later at Mid-America.
Yeah, I remember he was there. So
that was kind of cool. But so he had a really fast street stock there as well. And for me, coming from the drag race background, you beat a guy, he's out.
Sure.
So we actually beat him in one of those final rounds.
You had the good lane, right?
Yeah, we had the good lane, yeah. So when it came time to announce the places, we were second, which, don't get me wrong, that was way past any expectations we had.
What was the margin of victory?
The margin of victory was .0001.
1/10,000th of a second.
If I would have known that, I would have exhaled when the game dropped.
Give a little blow down the track there, sure. That's funny.
So that was just beyond cool to finish second.
Sure.
First time out like that, second Pinewood Derby race. That was awesome. John had set us up with all the parts and pieces.
Sure.
We put it all together, did the prep, did the tuning here at the Zeebzob Speed Shop. So A bit of a joint effort. I can't say I really built the car, but we assembled it, prepped it, tuned it, so I was still really proud of the results.
Oh, absolutely. Prepping it is such a big thing that I know I'm not that great at it, which is why I like the bearing classes, But you had not only success in that class, but you moved on to other classes, namely the Eliminators with the modified thin razor wheels. Talk about that.
Benji at JBD Racing was selling a body.
Okay.
So I had bought that body, got some wheels for it, prepped it, never even got a chance to run it, which was kind of scary. I'm just running it down the board, and I forget what steer I decided on, but all of a sudden we send it over to National Pinewood Derby Racing League, and the thing's really cooking. I mean, it's competitive. It's right in there. So I was beyond ecstatic with that. So we ran that first street stock and that Eliminator, then the whole 2013 Man of the Mountain series, which we did fairly well, but every time one of those cars was right there, we'd always get like a one-run death wiggle.
One tank slapper, yeah.
I think Mario texted me one time during the race and said, "Why do your cars always wiggle?"
Yeah, you got them right on the edge there, and that's one thing too that I've seen is when you're testing your cars, you try to get it right to that edge of wiggling, and then you second guess yourself. Well, this is how it's doing on your track. What do you think it'll do out in Utah? Is it going to have that wiggle? And that's the tough thing. You never know what it's going to do. So, but yeah, you've had a lot of good success in Eliminator too. You're considered one of the top guys. I guess who do you look at as the guys you want to beat in that class?
Well, I want to beat them all.
Yeah, well, good answer. Yeah.
That's not realistic, but there's a lot of fast guys. I mean, Benji's been in and out. I think he's back being fast. Joel's been in and out, and as you know, he won the Man of the Mountain. He's right there. Hogan's right there. Kinzer's right there. WK, Bullet.
Sure.
Spacewalker, I think, can come out of the woodwork and swoop in and win one anytime he wants.
And he'll probably have like 12 cars racing against you because that guy's a madman when he builds. He's got so many cars.
But I think that class is so tight now, it's really anybody's game.
Sure.
Any one of those cars can win. I think John probably is almost right there too with his new car. There's a lot of guys.
Sure. And now you've got a second Eliminator.
Yeah,
the blue one, which is even faster.
The blue one is I know you had a car called Moneymaker, but the blue one's secretly the Moneymaker.
Okay. You're stealing my name, aren't you? That's fine. I can license it to you.
It won a little bit of scratch in the 63-foot E3 challenge.
That was here.
Yeah. So that was cool. But
and for those of you don't know, the nationals this year at NPWDRL were on a 63-foot track. So I was able to, through the help of Quad Dad, get some extra sections for my track, and I had 63 feet here in my basement, and it was from stem to stern, man. That took up my whole basement. But we had a little challenge race before that because I think it was Hogan's that said he wanted another shot at you. So there was a little money challenge here that you were fortunate enough to come away with the win on that.
Yeah, Hogan and GS1, who I failed to mention earlier.
Oh, sure.
And WK out of Hawaii.
Yeah.
Those guys were really running good. Matter of fact, that year at the end of the Man of Mountain, GS1 kind of put his stamp on that class. I think he picked up like 8,000s between the second last race and the last race. So the whole while I was kind of joking, but I was totally serious. This shouldn't be called the E3 challenge. This should be called the GS1 challenge because he was the man.
Oh, yeah. GS1 is a guy, his name is Fred, and he's out of Ohio. He races at both APR and NPWDRL, and I in the bearing class, I always lose to him in Ohio, but can usually squeak past him in Utah. So that's another thing, different tracks run different ways, and I was lucky enough to beat him here too, because he sent some cars to this place and we raced here, and he's got really, really fast cars. So he's
he's definitely fast.
Definitely.
I was definitely nervous on that E3 challenge.
Sure.
Because
it had your name on it.
The deal was it all got set up behind the scenes. Right. I didn't set this up.
Yeah, it's all because Hogan said he wanted another shot at you.
Right. So I was just fetching cars was my job, because the rules would have been no running prior because nobody had any 63-foot experience.
Right.
So I basically finished prepping that car that morning, made a few tweaks I thought might work on 63 feet, and then Ian, Goat Boy, he was going to be the staging guy.
Sure.
And I kind of went through how to stage the car, but we couldn't touch the cars, so it'd be fair. So every time these cars are going down, I'm just as nervous as can be.
Right.
There's so many good cars in there.
Yeah, there were. And speaking of staging, you were telling me just a moment ago about when you were staging, how nervous you were.
Oh, man. Touch back on the drag racing a little bit.
Sure.
When I first started drag racing, I'd go up to the line and I'm just a bundle of nerves. Mm-hmm. And as years went on, it would only be the first pass of the year I'd be that nervous. But, even my son's first scout race, we couldn't stage the cars. So we're down at the finish line so we can see the time. Mm-hmm. And it's one guy staging the cars. And at the time, we had taken a lunch break. We had 3 out of the 4 runs done, and we were in second place. Mm-hmm. Come this last run, I'm more nervous than if I was in a drag race. And I'm thinking, this is so crazy. Inside my mind, I'm like, this is so crazy, Todd. You got no control over this.
Right.
It's a little wood car with these plastic wheels. But I guess that's just how excited I was.
Sure.
But, the first time I came to the Zeebzob Speed Shop, I didn't have any problem letting you know, hey, I don't know how to stage this thing. Can you show me? I had no idea.
Now, do you think I was the best person to ask? You should have been calling Joel or David Jukes or something,
At the time, you were the best. You were the only guy.
Sure.
But, even at the 2013 Nationals, Joel would get the cars staged, and then I would come in and stage sometimes last. And I was so nervous of moving somebody else's
touching
car.
someone else's car, right?
And, I was just almost trembling inside. And that kind of led to a funny story, too. I had put the car up for one of the first runs in the final, and I accidentally had the backs not centered.
Okay.
Accidentally, I had it shifted over towards the dominant side. Well, the thing picked up 4,000s.
Okay.
And it was no fluke. So that really is how that car wanted to run. But then I kept running it that way, and it picked up every run. So
kind of by accident, you found that out.
By being nervous, we accidentally picked up the 4,000s. So that was kind of cool.
That's funny.
I'm a little calmer now, but I still get kind of hyped up over this stuff.
Sure, absolutely. And one other thing I want to touch on quick, too, speaking of racing here at the Zeebzob Speed Shop, I believe it was the March race in 2014, this year. We had a little race here. We had some guys send cars proxy, and the bearing race, you had the lead before it was finished, correct? If I remember right?
Well, I think just a little backstory here. That car was just recently put together before that race. With your help and Mario and especially Ian. The car was just put together, tested a few times, and that might have been its first race. I'd have to look back at my notes and stuff, but after the prelims, I think we were in 3rd or 4th.
Okay.
So I was here live for that, kind of helping the race, but I had to leave because my son had a Scout Awards banquet.
Sure.
So we left, and I had my oldest son, who's in college, he was on watching.
Right.
And he's texting me all these results, and it's like, okay, you guys are in fourth now. You're in fifth, and I think he left it off. You're in fifth. I thought, well, that's done. There's no way that car is going to bounce back. I mean, it was going the other direction.
Right.
I think there was 6 in the finals. We were in fifth, but I was still happy with that. I mean, given who was sent in. I mean, there were some
heavy hitters,
pretty big name guys in the Baron class at the time had sent in. And then it really came down to the last run, as you know.
Right.
It was in the fast lane. It was all set up to do its damage in that lane, and it did it.
Yeah.
And went to the top. And then I'm getting texts from my oldest son. You guys won, and he's kind of got a sense of humor like you.
Sure.
And I'm like, yeah, you're.
We've been known to tease Todd a little bit here and there.
You're pulling my chain. I'm like, okay, what did it get? Did it get fourth? He's like, no, you won. And then you had sent me a text a little while after that with the same thing, and I'm like, well, knowing those two,
right.
They could both be independently messing with me in the same way, but you're like, no, you got trophy to pick up, and you won.
And that was that acrylic trophy that Goat Boy had made. In the shape of Wisconsin.
Really nice shape of the state of Wisconsin. Yeah, that was a cool trophy.
That was a lot of fun. So, all right, let's do a little recap too. Your last race was the 2014 Man of the Mountain. What are your thoughts on that one? I know that you raced into the finals as far as bearing class, the one I'm paying attention to. So I know that you were right there with me in Bullet and moved up from the prelims, the semis.
Yeah, I think the 2014 Man of the Mountain was just every time we'd send cars in, there'd be broken wheels.
Sure.
It really comes down to how I had those boxes cut. But every time I'd get that phone call, oh, man, you talk about being disappointing. But John had lent some wheels. Joel QuickTime had lent some wheels. And admittedly, those cars ran pretty good for some spare wheels.
Sure.
So that kept us good enough in the top 15 to make it to the semis. So let's see. I think in street stock we were maybe 9th or 10th. We had TQ'd the semis and then missed going into the grand finals by 1 spot.
Okay.
Eliminator, we finished second in the semis, and we TQ'd the finals.
Yep, I remember. I tuned in right there, and I thought, here you are. You're TQ. You're set to go.
It was so close, though. I mean, there were so many cars that were within like 1/1000th of a second.
Yep.
I think if somebody sneezed in the back of John's shop, it probably would change the results.
Could have, yeah. So then, your first run of the grand finals.
Yeah, it wasn't slow, but it just needed to be a little more. I think the finals. I hope I'm getting this right. For sure, it was Joel QuickTime, Kinser, Bullet, and myself.
Okay.
I think Benji at JBD just missed the finals by us, just by a little bit.
Okay.
So I believe at the end of that grand finals, all 4 cars were within 0.7 of a thousandth over a 4-run average. So
yeah, that's tight.
Pretty amazing. We ended up being on the bottom of that, but ended up getting track record along the way. So I was really pumped about that.
Nice.
So hopefully that stands for one race.
For one race, yeah. Well, with guys like Joel and Kinser and JBD, they're always pushing these cars faster. It's hard to keep up. I read something just today that Joel said, if you're not trying new things, you're gonna fall back quickly, and he's absolutely right on that. So, so that was your Man of the Mountain.
That was Man of the Mountain. As far as bearing goes, I think we tied for 5th in the semis, which got us into the finals.
Right.
But that was so tough. You got in.
Yeah,
you look at the difference in times between, say, your car and ours. you're talking like 1,000 split.
Yeah, it's
That's
tight.
all it takes. And then, of course, there's a couple guys right up at the top that I don't know, man. They're using black magic.
I don't know what they're doing either, but and that's a cool thing about that. For the most part, over the last year or two, it's really kind of been a Utah versus Wisconsin thing in the bearings. But I tell you now, you got Bullet coming out of Alaska, out of nowhere there. JBD's been getting a lot better in that one.
Yep.
So WK, of course, out of Hawaii, always very fast. Opa is out of Colorado. So now we're getting guys from different areas of GS1, of course, he's from Ohio,
sure.
So definitely him. So yeah, the Utah versus Wisconsin thing isn't as much as it was in recent past. And when I say Wisconsin, I include Goat Boy as an honorary Wisconsinite, even though he's just over the border there in Illinois. He does test here at the Zeebzob Speed Shop in Wisconsin. All right. I guess, what are your plans for 2015? Are you going to scale back to focus on one class? Are you going to expand? You're going to race multiple leagues, one league? I guess, what's up for E3?
I don't think I got time for any more leagues.
Sure.
We sent in one time when you guys went down for APR.
Right.
I just don't see us doing multiple leagues.
Sure, it's tough to do, for sure.
It is, and I barely got enough time to do what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I want to try saving some money for sure to go to the Nationals this year.
Right.
We had a really good run at Mid-America last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you did. You did really well.
And I want to try to represent again if
Sure.
we can.
Yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about your Mid-America success?
Yeah, that was such a cool race. We had just got our cars back from Utah, from John, and I didn't have time to do anything with any of them. And, I know you and Ian were kind of ripping on me for not even cleaning the bearings, but I just didn't have time.
Where did that get us?
So, we had come down here the night before, and we had put a scout car together for my son and for the open oil, and then we were going to race. I think they called their Eliminator Pro.
Yeah.
Was it Pro Mod?
I can't remember now.
It might have been Pro Modified, and it was Pro Bearing.
Yeah.
So
I think you're right. Yeah.
that would have been the bearing class. So we brought the cars over here. They all ran pretty decent. If you remember, you and Ian and our bearing car were all running about the same time.
And Opa was in there too.
Yeah, but we didn't test his car here.
Right. No, I'm just saying
he was out there.
Yeah,
and he was running good. He was definitely running good. But I didn't re-prep any of the cars, and we didn't have any expectations. We really didn't. And when all was said and done, my son won his oil class for the Wolves, and then that was a 6-lane track.
Okay.
His car would have been really great on a 4-lane track, but once it got in the 5th or 6th lane, the car would go into a wiggle. And
tank slapper.
Yeah, tank slapper, yeah. And one of the final runs in the 5th lane, the cars ran down and it didn't wiggle. And we're standing there, even though the pro racing was going on. I was with my son for the scout stuff.
Sure.
Whatever their class would have been for like the street pro. That was running. I kind of had one eye on that, and one eye on the scout race. And I told my son, I said, it didn't wiggle. I think, you might be in the top 6.
Might be in the hunt.
Where the big trophies are given out. So the clock didn't take. And they had to rerun it.
No, really? I didn't know this.
And it went into a tank slap. So he ended up, they throw away your worst run, which was in lane 6. So there's 5 other cars next to it.
Sure.
And, I love the left side dominant deal, even though I'm right-handed. So he had a left side car. So when it got to those outer lanes, that's when it went into the wiggle. So he ended up finishing 7th, but he was ecstatic. We had no expectations. And then what was so cool out there was you couldn't see a monitor to see where you were at.
Okay.
So everything was kind of hidden. The results were hidden to the end. And I don't know what was happening with that track, but our other eliminator, our green eliminator car, called Mean Green, it was within like 1,000th of a second of our really fast car, which is called Hardline.
Okay.
So Hardline was number 1 in the qualifying, and Mean Green was number 2. And that's how they finished as well in their finals.
Okay.
And then in Bearings, we co-TQ'd with Ian Goatboy.
Yeah.
So
right.
that was awesome. And then in the finals, I didn't pick up on it, but Ian picked up on it. Our car, for some reason, in what was considered the slow lane, I think there was about a 2,000 or 3,000 difference between the outside lanes. And ours went down the slow lane, and he said, man, that was a good time in that lane. And I think that's what did it.
Yeah.
So we're unveiling the list of results, and I would have been ecstatic if we had just got a trophy in that class. And when it got up to, like, how many places did they give out? 6. Okay, 6th, 5th. You know,
so, Zeebzob,
yeah.
Zeebzob. Yeah.
So when it got up to like 3rd place, I'm telling my son, holy man, we got 3rd or better, and then it was 3rd, 2nd, and we were at the top.
If I remember right, Ian and Opa tied for the 2nd place, and as soon as they popped up at the same time, you knew you had 1st place. You were hoisting the trophy there.
It was cool. We did well out there. So really looking forward. Back to your original question. Really looking.
What was my original question?
What's our plans for next year?
Oh yeah.
The biggest plan we want to go to those nationals.
Sure.
Out at the Mid America. Is it pronounced Klaas?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, that's just a really nice venue and facility. So really look forward to that. We want to race street stock. We want to race eliminator. We want to race bearing. I'm going to try to put together a street rod. I'm a little intimidated by the build, so...
what about the snail?
Our snail. It's called Rewind. Its nickname is No Sail Snail.
Yeah.
It's a car with brakes on the back. We were getting like 5 3/4 second passes in traffic at the Zeebzob Speed Shop here in Wisconsin, but that sucker was almost getting in the 3-second range over at John's. So
sure.
We'll probably throw it in for a novelty, or if he's got like the 2 ounce again, we'll probably throw it in. But I think we're probably going to focus on just a couple classes during the regular season here, and then try to throw it all in at the Nationals.
Okay. And then lastly, what was, I guess, some of the best advice you'd been given?
Well, I had been given a lot of good advice, especially on building. There's no way without a lot of people helping me or helping us, we'd have ever had any of the success we had. So a lot of people I need to thank for that. But I actually think John gave me the best advice. When I first talked to him on the phone about placing the order for the stuff for the Nationals, I had already had my list together of all this weird stuff I wanted to try, and I wasn't exactly sharing it with them because, of course, in my mind, at least 2 of those things were like world record ideas.
Sure.
And, most of them don't work, but the advice he gave was do what the fast guys are doing until you get up to where you're at their level. And then start working your way through your list, because it might be one thing out of 100 that gives you a 1,000th gain.
And do one thing at a time, so you know.
One thing at a time.
If you change 4 things, you don't know if something slowed you down and something sped you up. You don't know what it was. But that is good advice.
Yeah, it was good advice, and I'm just to the point. Not that I think we're at the level of some of these guys, but I'm just at the point where we're trying things. And if you want to see how that's working, just check out the Eliminator semifinals from the Man of the Mountain video. Our green Eliminator, I was trying stuff, and it almost got dead last.
I know the feeling. So, well, Todd, I thank you very much for being part of the Pinewood Derby Roundup here at the Zeebzob Studios.
It's been an honor, really, to be the first guest.
Yes.
I know you were the first guest, but because it's your show,
Yeah.
you can't be a guest.
I was the host.
I thought it was cool to be the first guest.
Good.
So there is an advantage of living 15 minutes from the
Absolutely.
Zeebzob speech.
So, looks like Mario, you're next up. You live close too. So, but yeah, thanks for being on. And this is Zeebzob and E3 signing off.